when I first contacted you about coming on this show, I was kind of brainstorming ideas, and one idea I came up with is to do a little bit of fantasy booking. And as I said at the top of the show, the next couple of episodes of the Wrestling with Johners podcast will be looking more at fantasy booking scenarios. Now, we all know WrestleMania is in the can, it's in the books, and that the final image that we all have of WrestleMania 36 was Drew up on the turnbuckles with the championship belt, the new WWE heavyweight champion. So, but he didn't have the moment we all wanted him to have. He didn't have the 80,000 people in the Raymond James Stadium giving him the fireworks and the roar of approval that he should have had. So what we're going to do over the next half an hour or so is to book Drew McIntyre's next 12 months as WWE champion, his potential challenges, his feud, potential matches, pay-per-view opponents. Not to go into too much detail, but to have a little bit of fun and booking him all the way up to WrestleMania 37, hoping, keeping fingers crossed that he might still be WWE champion there, so that he can finally have his WrestleMania moment, his kind of crowning moment that he should have got last Sunday. So Michael, when I first came to you with this a week or more ago, you've been doing your homework, you've been preparing your list. We've been going backwards and forwards via DM to kind of make sure that we're all on the same track. How did you kind of prepare for this? Not giving away anything that's on your list, but how did you kind of go into this project and kind of think, right, how am I going to kind of get Drew to WrestleMania and have that big kind of championship celebration that he should have had on Sunday?
I'm assuming like yourself, when I first looked at it, I was like, right, so Drew's won at WrestleMania 36. I want him to be the winner at 37, and then work my way almost like to the middle, so work it to Royal Rumble, and then how I would pass it from there. And
you worked backwards, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes and no. There's some of it I was like, well, I'll work back from WrestleMania to Royal Rumble, but from WrestleMania 36, I'll work to SummerSlam,
right,
and then work from SummerSlam to Survivor Series, and then work backwards from Royal Rumble to. So it was key pay-per-views.
And how many times has your list changed over the last 24 or 48 hours?
I've got through about half a book.
Same here. And in fact, I'm looking at my list now and I'm thinking of changing it while we're on the air. But this is
scenarios.
Yeah, this is meant to be just a bit of fun because we all want to give Drew his crowning moment in 12 months' time for WrestleMania Hollywood, WrestleMania 37 from the SoFi Stadium. And let's hope that they kind of stick with him. And the reason why I think they will stick with him, I think that he's popular backstage. He's popular with the fans. He's got a great look, a great presence, amazing on the microphone, very, very confident. He's probably got the hottest finisher in the wrestling business at the moment. Let's be honest, they've put the Claymore kick over, bigger than any move they've put over in recent months and recent years. And I think you've obviously got John Cena on his way out. You've got Roman Reigns, and who knows when he'll be back. And there's the WWE seems to be quite heel heavy at the moment, in my opinion. And there's not kind of true baby faces that they can really put their full weight behind and strap the cart to and just let him go with it. And that's why I think Drew McIntyre is in for a long run, because I think he ticks all the boxes. And I think I think from a business standpoint and from a wrestling standpoint, I think he is a money man, to be honest with you. I think people were paid to see him. Now, at the moment, nobody can pay to see him. So we want to at least get him to be WWE champion for when the arenas and the stadiums open up again, whenever that might be. But let's have a little bit of fun anyway. So obviously, during WrestleMania, they were advertising their next pay-per-view, Money in the Bank, which under normal circumstances will go ahead on May the 10th. So less than a month away now. Now, providing all of these pay-per-views go ahead, whether it be in front of no fans or in front of an arena full of fans, where the calendar of WWE pay-per-view events will go as follows. And I think there's 10 pay-per-views, or at least 9 or 10 between now and the next WrestleMania. So let's quickly go through them. So next month they're advertising Money in the Bank. In June, all being well, it looks like they're going to have Stomping Grounds again. And then in July they're going to have Extreme Rules. August SummerSlam, that's the usual kind of August slot for a WWE pay-per-view event. That's kind of the next big one, you could say. September, based on previous years, based on their calendar, it's going to be Clash of Champions. October, it's looking like Hell in a Cell. Possibly a Saudi event between October and November. November obviously leads us into Survivor Series. December, TLC. January, of course, the Royal Rumble. And then if it's anything like this year, they'll skip a pay-per-view in February and give us Elimination Chamber in March before WrestleMania again in April. So we're only really going to be looking at key pay-per-views, that kind of what was described as the big four or big five pay-per-views. But we've also got the rest of the calendar to play with if we want to throw in anything else or any silly kind of options or anything else you think could work. But I'm going to start with you then, Michael. So we spoke about Money in the Bank being the next pay-per-view. Presuming Drew's going to be defending the championship potentially on the show, who have you got him down as the first challenger? And one thing I want to throw in before you kind of give us your first choice is he had a match against the Big Show on this Monday's Raw. Now that was described as kind of a one and done deal, so it's not likely they're going to build anything big between Drew and Big Show unless you think they are. But looking at it, certainly so fresh off the back of WrestleMania, most of the heels lost at WrestleMania. So no heels are in a strong position at the moment. So there's no obvious contender as it stands at the minute to Drew's championship to be his natural number one contender. So I actually found the first pick my hardest pick because at the moment all the heels are very, very flat. Where did you go with your first pick then for May and for Money in the Bank?
For me, I had this horrible feeling that they'll take it off him at Money in the Bank.
What? It's going to be a short conversation.
No. This is the thing that we were saying few different. I had one vision that they were going to keep it on him all the way through to WrestleMania.
Yeah.
And then there was this awful feeling that they were going to take it off him at Money in the Bank, and then he would then build all the way back up to potentially winning the belt, whether it be Survivor Series, Royal Rumble, or even WrestleMania.
Yeah.
But especially when we go back over WWE's logic and what they've done in the past, it doesn't put it past them. So for me, I put it down that Drew wouldn't defend the belt.
Okay.
At Royal Rumble. Put my teeth in. Sorry. At Money in the Bank, I put it across that Orton would win Money in the Bank. And what they would do is just do a standard Money in the Bank match for him, because they'll have Braun defending his belt against somebody. So instead of having both belts, especially with how the pay-per-views are at the moment, you're not going to get your 4 or 5 hour shows. So not every title's going to be on the line. So how I thought they may do it would be almost like miss a pay-per-view. So Drew would miss Money in the Bank, but then possibly face somebody at Stomping Ground if we go by what the logic is with pay-per-views. Sure. So it would be SmackDown champion face whoever, and Raw would have a Money in the Bank match where Orton would win. Now, Orton, being Orton, doesn't need to cash that in straight away. So how I had it was that one of the journeys would be, I don't think Drew should lose the belt until Survivor Series, but does defend the title until then. Now you've got the likes of, you could even have a potential heel turn of Aleister Black coming to it. Again, I don't think they should defend the belt on TV shows. I think they should be defending it on what would potentially be a pay-per-view. Go back to the old style, because you've got a lot of filler that you can build, like what we were talking about with Charlotte and Io Shirai. You've got a lot of people that could potentially take up TV time to build to your pay-per-views, and to build to your matches. So even if Drew doesn't wrestle for potentially have a match for a month and a half, it doesn't matter because there's so much else going on the TV. Whereas obviously if you've got a live show, it's a bit different. So I thought he could have a potential feud with Aleister Black turning heel a bit further on, but straight after what happened at WrestleMania, and unfortunately we're pushing the Big Show, which is why he was on Raw. I get that. Yeah. I would have Rollins. Now the reason why I would have Rollins is because he could use the excuse of, I won that match at WrestleMania. I shouldn't have had to carry on with the match, regardless of whether I won DQ or not. I won, so I'm the winner. In his head, he's the winner. He is the face of Raw, as he always talks about. He's the face of Raw, and even Drew could cut a promo by saying, you know, I'm going to be a fighting champion. I'll face anyone that I want to. Anyone that wants to have a go. And by having that, Rollins turns up, and he has Murphy and one of the AOP, or if he's able to come down, I know he can't wrestle because he's injured, but attacking to help build for him to have the ability to have a match. And each week, or whenever Rollins is on TV, whenever Drew's on TV, Rollins and his gang fight, beat him up, building to a match at SummerSlam, in which Rollins keeps putting over that he's the face, he's better than Drew, he's doing this, he's got all this help behind him, he can be the saviour, as we know, he can be the guy, the face for Raw. However, Drew beats him at SummerSlam to completely crush that. So you've got a potential two-month build, not having to have it on each week. You could have just Rollins running his mouth each week to build up to it, and each week have somebody else from like Murphy or even Rollins just sneak attacking Drew if he's doing a promo backstage, just to build the hype to SummerSlam. Again, Stomping Ground. If we include Stomping Grounds and Extreme Rules, we could build where Stomping Ground could be Drew faces Murphy. We could have then go on to Extreme Rules. If he faces them again, he could have Murphy and one half of the AOP, and then again at SummerSlam he faces Rollins, almost like building up to a final boss. But ultimately, Drew beats Seth, regardless of what goes on, all the interference. He beats him at SummerSlam, so he's the champ. He's done it. He's done dusted. I have this is where it goes a bit weird. I have a bit where Jinder Mahal takes a number one contenders match on a return in a gauntlet match. He wins against Drew. Sorry, he challenges against Drew, which Drew wins at the next pay-per-view. So you still got to build from that. You're leaving Randy Orton on the back foot. You're not touching him at all. He's staying away from it because at this point you don't know. I know we've got the brand split, but you don't know where he's going because they keep teasing him on SmackDown and Raw. So a bit like how they did with Charlotte with Royal Rumble, you're not too sure where he's going to go. So they play off that by bringing in Jinder Mahal, winning a gauntlet match against. You could have him against. Let's have a look. You could have him against Bobby Lashley. You could have Samoa Joe, Ricochet, even Finn Balor, and building Jinder to be the next threat because he was a prior champion. So he thinks that he should be the champion. They've got a bit of a storied allyship with the 3MB, which he plays off as a face, but then turns heel because he's better as a heel. He plays off that and turns on Drew, setting up their next match. This goes on for a couple of weeks. Drew, being the dominant champion he is, beats him at the next pay-per-view. However, this is when Orton cashes in and wins the title, beating Drew. So a bit like how Edge did with Cena after Elimination Chamber. So you had a guy who is not, he's been beaten down, so it's not almost like not a whitewash, but you still, like we were talking about with Becky and Shayna Baszler, you still keeping him strong by having to face somebody else after a previous match straight away. Orton cashes in, as I said, beats him, and Drew loses the belt, obviously, as you would do. However, at the very end, after that match, Brock Lesnar returns with Paul Heyman. So we've not seen Brock Lesnar since WrestleMania, and we're going all the way through to potentially Extreme Rules, maybe SummerSlam. Brock demands a match against Orton during this and wins the belt at Survivor Series. So that's the belt back on Brock Lesnar. Okay, Brock Lesnar will then keep that belt all the way through to WrestleMania. During this time, since Drew has lost the belt, he's going on a road to redemption type of thing. He's lost his, he's been beaten by Orton. He's lost his confidence, so he then goes into a run of matches facing off against an Aleister Black heel turn. Drew could potentially lead a team at Survivor Series and win. Bobby Lashley, being on his own, could just be a dominant monster that he used to be. He would be very good at building up Drew because they're both quite big lads that potentially wouldn't be a squash match. It would be a good physical match, a very hard-hitting match, which Drew would then win. Drew would then win another gauntlet match at a Raw taping before TLC, which would then take him on to face Randy Orton at Royal Rumble for a number one contendership. So at this point, you've got Brock Lesnar doing what he's doing, and Drew's facing different people all the way through. Again, you don't have him on the show every week because you want to build to that mystique and you want to build to the aura of Drew being who he is. Drew then wins against Randy Orton at Royal Rumble. Seth wins the Royal Rumble, but Seth would then pick Brock to prove to him, to prove to everyone that he is just as good as Drew. And obviously, we know Seth and Brock have had their history, which would then build up to a triple threat at WrestleMania 37, with Drew being the number one contender, Seth winning the Rumble and inserting himself into the match, and Brock defending it, where Drew pins Brock again to become champion. That's one of many ideas that I've had.
Wow.
It's the problem I've got is, as I said, you've got so many different avenues to go down. The problem you've got is you try not to redo everyone else's storyline.
Yeah.
From the previous year. There was one where I got it where there was one that involved Drew takes on Randy Orton, who beats him at Survivor Series with the help of a returning Brock Lesnar. So Brock Lesnar interferes himself, brings himself, like how he did at Hell in a Cell. Lesnar beats Orton at the Royal Rumble after demanding a shot at him. In the meantime, Drew is told that he has to earn his shot if he wants it back. Brock costs him Drew's spot at Royal Rumble because of what he did, because of what Drew did to him the previous year. But then Drew wins the Elimination Chamber to then face Brock at WrestleMania. But again, as I said, the problem you've got with that is, are people still going to remember 12 months ago? There's a lot of different avenues you can go down, but the problem we have with wrestlers that are on the roster and people that are available. We've talked about before on social media the whole brand split. You've got people that could come across. You could have potentially. You could even include Keith Lee coming over. That'd be quite a cool match to see. Keith Lee versus Drew. You could even have Undisputed Era coming across and inserting themselves into the Royal Rumble, costing Drew the belt, or as we know, they've had some storied history on NXT that could be running over onto the main roster, which is why they cost Drew the shot at Royal Rumble for him to win. By this point, obviously, Brock Lesnar's the champion, so he's going to be in all my circumstances, Brock is always the champion at WrestleMania. But in the meantime, you've got Adam Cole, a bit like how I did with the Seth Rollins at the beginning of the year. Yeah. You've got Adam Cole and all the Undisputed Era coming through, and Drew has to work his way through them to then potentially win Elimination Chamber, or even potentially a match at a Saudi Arabia show between Royal Rumble, Elimination Chamber, and WrestleMania for him to be inserted into WrestleMania. Personally, I think it should be a one-on-one match between Drew and Brock at the end for WrestleMania. I think it should be just to prove that he can do it on the big stage. But again, you've got so many different factors in there. You could even have Roman Reigns coming through into it. So you've got Roman Reigns facing Drew doesn't lose the belt at all. So it's just his way of going through the entire roster from NXT, Raw, SmackDown, and working his way through Cesaro, the likes of having fantastic matches like against Cesaro. You've got, as I said, Keith Lee. You've got every member of Undisputed Era. You could even involve New Day and have Kofi come into it, because I can see Kofi and Drew having a really, really good match, which could potentially be at Survivor Series, whether it be in a team match or whether it be a one-on-one. I do quite like the idea of having champion versus champion at Survivor Series, but depending on how everything plays out regarding the current situation around the world, I think certain things like WrestleMania and Survivor Series, because you've got so much on there, will be split into 2 days. Now, hopefully, touch wood, fingers crossed, it doesn't get to that point and we come back to some kind of normality by then. But I think the bigger pay-per-views that would be wanting every championship on there, I think they'll push that to a 2-day show. So if it's not fixed by, sorry, I shouldn't say the word fixed. If it's not, if it's not come back to some kind of normality by SummerSlam, I think SummerSlam will be a 2-day event because you've got so much on there. But I think a lot of people will have to take a back seat to push everything, because as we've seen on Raw, they've been showing previous Royal Rumbles. They've had a podcast. You can't have everyone on there because not everyone is available to work.
No, of course.
But my personal view would be to have Drew keep it until potentially Survivor Series. In my fan head, for me, it would be to work through Raw and SmackDown and potentially some of NXT. You could insert whoever you want in. As I said, you could insert Randy Orton. You could even have Edge. That'd be quite a cool match. Keith Lee would be a fantastic obstacle to go against, but I would leave Brock Lesnar alone until WrestleMania. Potentially have a stare down, have Brock Lesnar as he's done before. He's very good at cheap shots from people from behind. That'd be fantastic, because it just builds to people saying, we want you to get Brock Lesnar, we want you to beat him. There's not a problem with him being a champion, because if you're going to try and get over as much as you can, he's he's not going to be potentially going to be there because he's not allowed to come out of Canada. So,
Yeah.
which is one of the. So it is a good good view of looking at down the different roads, but you've got so many fantastically talented wrestlers on each of the brand that, as you said, you could be scratching your head and changing it right now. There's so many people that you could flip switch and say, well, that be a heel, they could turn face, you know, he could join a team, he could go out on be a loner and just be and just take on anybody and everyone, basically saying for the next 12 months it's an open challenge, anyone can have a go, and you could just do that.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that could also play a factor is that you've got the brand splits, which are expecting to take place in around about October 2020, the same as it did last year. So potentially anybody that's on SmackDown currently might be on Raw, and that could really kind of flip things on their head come around about October, November, especially as we're heading into Survivor Series in the latter part of the year. And hopefully by then we'll have more, you know, fans in the arenas and the stadiums. But so I mean, your kind of WrestleMania 37 lineup, was it a three-way or was it Brock versus Drew? How's that main event looking for you?
In my head, I prefer it to be a Brock versus Drew. But I think if I was looking at their viewing as a business, I would potentially, because you've already had Drew versus Brock, unless you build it right, people are going to be like, nah, I'm not really that bothered. Hence the reason why they inserted Seth to win the belt at WrestleMania, cashing in, because people had already seen Brock versus Roman many times and they weren't that happy about it. So me personally, I think it should just be a one-on-one, but I think they may insert somebody into it, whether that be Seth, whether that be Adam Cole, or even, I know it sounds daft, you could, depending on how they build other people, you could even put Aleister Black in there. I think it should be somebody who's going to be on there full time to give the belt. Brock doesn't need the belt. We've established that. Same with like we've talked about many times with Bray Wyatt, with The Fiend. The Fiend doesn't need the belt. He's an attraction. Undertaker doesn't need the belt. It's an attraction that people will tune into. So no matter who it is, Brock could just be, as many people have said, a bully. But for the feeling that we've talked about regarding the way that it should have happened, he needs to take it off of Brock at next WrestleMania to get that crowd of 80, 90,000 people cheering behind him. If it's, again, it all depends on how they book other people. They could build other people, but in the current climate, I don't think, especially with who they've got available and who they've got on the roster, I don't think they can build anyone enough in a quick enough time to take Brock on. I think it should be. I think it should be Brock Lesnar versus Drew, with a potential with him pinning Brock. And if they do a triple threat, for instance, if they do insert Seth in, I think they should have it where Seth doesn't get pinned, it's Brock who gets pinned, and then the crowd will blow the top.
Wow. I don't know how I can compete with your list there. I think we'll end the show there, shall we, Michael? My list pales into comparison with the amount of booking that you put in there. So that was amazing. Really, really amazing.
Oh, well, thank you.
And really, really enjoyed that. But I'll be starting with my list then. And you've got to focus on Money in the Bank, which is the next pay-per-view, March the 10th. And just for kind of, giggles really. I've got that Drew's next feud is going to be with former 3MB stablemate Jinder Mahal. Now, it's kind of, a lot of people are saying that Jinder's on the road to recovery, that he's going to be coming back very, very soon. I think on one of the next few episodes of Raw, Jinder comes out, congratulates Drew, and pats him on the back, and then kind of attacks him from behind. And I don't think Jinder's going to be accompanied by the Singh brothers. I think that Heath Slater is going to be accompanying Jinder, and there's going to be this pretense that they're going to reform 3MB or some version of it. So like I say, that a while ago, there's no obvious challenger at the minute, so to kind of have that thread of 3MB kind of reforming, and then for Jinder and Heath to turn heel and to attack Drew from behind, I think that could potentially lead to a Jinder versus Drew match at Money in the Bank. And don't forget Hornswoggle, he was the unofficial member of 3MB, and he put on that excellent was it WLC versus El Torito or whatever it was? That was a fantastic kickoff match.
Yeah,
if ever I've seen one.
But it was one of the best matches ever.
It really was. El Torito and Hornswoggle. So Hornswoggle's got to be there, of course, and with the celebration cake and the balloons and the streamers, only for them to turn their evil backs on Drew McIntyre. So I think that, potentially Money in the Bank could be a little bit of a fun match between Drew and Jinder Mahal, with the other members of the former 3MB stable on the outside. Looking into Stomping Grounds and maybe Extreme Rules, I think it gets a bit more serious. And I think once AJ Styles has clawed his way out of that grave from last Saturday in a Boneyard match against The Undertaker, I think AJ Styles is definitely one of them characters, a credible contender where he could potentially stake his claim to a potential championship match. And I think that to have him against Drew at maybe an Extreme Rules with some sort of stipulation, maybe a tables match, or maybe a TLC match with ladders and chairs involved as well, have the belt hanging high above the ring, that could be quite good. But I think Drew's going to hold on to the belt all the way through these early pay-per-views, to be honest with you. I've got an inkling that the first big show, the first big pay-per-view where fans will be back in the arenas, is going to be SummerSlam. And I think that's the opportunity where you have kind of Drew kind of retain again, and to retain the championship, and to have a big moment in front of 20,000 people, wherever it might be, for SummerSlam. And I think he's going to have his big match against Seth Rollins. I think Seth Rollins is going to be Drew's opponent at SummerSlam. Another heel, hot off of a loss at WrestleMania, of course, against Kevin Owens. But I think Seth by then will have kind of rebuilt himself, rebuilt his character, rebuilt his confidence. So we know that he's the cocky Monday Night Messiah. And I think that come SummerSlam, that'll be a fantastic main event to have Drew versus Seth. There might be some shenanigans on the outside. You might have Murphy and AOP there. You never know. But I think Drew is going to steamroll through Seth Rollins through SummerSlam in August. Looking through the other minor pay-per-views, September, you've got Clash of Champions. October, I think October will be a good opportunity at the Hell in a Cell pay-per-view for Drew McIntyre to right a wrong from a few years ago. And if you remember, it was, I believe, if I'm right in saying this, it was Andrade who took the NXT Championship off of Drew McIntyre and put Drew McIntyre on the shelf after executing that hammerlock DDT off of the turnbuckles, if I remember rightly, and injuring Drew McIntyre and putting him on the shelf for a good 8 or 9 months before he came back. And I think he came back onto the main roster, if I remember rightly. But this will be an opportunity. Andrade, he's a bit of a mainstay on the main roster now. He's currently the United States champion. Andrade may or may not have the United States championship come this pay-per-view, come Hell in a Cell in October. But I think that could be a good opportunity to elevate Andrade and to have those two go at it. They may not kind of tie up them loose ends from NXT. If Paul Heyman's anything to do with it, they probably will complete that thread, complete that cycle. And that will be part of the storyline going into it. Is you injured me, you put me on the shelf for 8 or 9 months back in NXT, you took the title off of me. And Andrade could attack him and challenge him, or set himself up as the next challenger to Drew's championship, and put himself in the WWE title picture at Hell in a Cell, which Drew will overcome yet again. Now, there will be a Saudi pay-per-view that same month if it's anything like 2019. And if you remember, shortly after this year's WrestleMania, a certain heavyweight boxing champion, Tyson Fury, put out a tweet challenging Drew McIntyre to a championship match. Now, Tyson, we've seen him before in the WWE. He wrestled at a Saudi show last October, I think. And Tyson's only going to wrestle in the biggest shows for the biggest money. And I think that the Saudi show in October could be when we see a fun little match of sorts between Tyson Fury challenging Drew McIntyre for the WWE Championship. And I think that that's when that whole kind of a loose end from Tyson's challenge could kind of come to fruition. I don't know how good of a match they'll have, possibly terrible, but I think it'll be a face versus face match as well, which will be an added dynamic to the match. But I think that Drew McIntyre is coming out of that Saudi show in October still as the champion. And then we go into the next big pay-per-view, Survivor Series. I remember by then, and I think probably the prior month, they would have had the brand split. So, everything's up in the air. All bets are off. You can have SmackDown talent getting drafted to Raw. You could potentially have Drew being drafted to SmackDown. Who knows? I still think he's going to be the face of Raw. And I think one wrestler that's going to be drafted to SmackDown, and I think he's recently returned from a lengthy injury himself. But I think that Sheamus could be drafted onto the Raw roster. And I think that Sheamus could potentially lay a challenge, possibly with an attack. You've got Celt versus Celt, and stake his claim as the number one contender to Drew's WWE Championship. And I got a funny feeling that Sheamus could be involved against Drew McIntyre. And I think that Survivor Series could be the place where that might happen. So how's it sounding so far, Michael?
I like that shout, yeah. I mean, we're both on the same page regarding the Seth Rollins at SummerSlam. I'm aware of the tweet that Fury's got. I just don't know how they'll build it. That's the only thing. But again, as we've talked about, it's a money show. Saudi Arabia shows don't seem to be storylined like everyone else. So it's almost like it's a blow off. It's like it's a televised house show. It doesn't matter, but I do think it'll be quite interesting how they'll build that through to facing him if that's what happens. Sheamus is somebody that I did think of, but again, it all depends on how they put him across on SmackDown. I think Sheamus would be a very, very good opponent to have for Drew. I think that's a good call. Is that?
Yeah, and he's come back as a heel and a brawling heel. You've got the Celt versus Celt kind of dynamic there as well, so they could build some sort of storyline over their heritage. So that could be quite an interesting one to blow off at Survivor Series. But I think Drew retains. So my kind of storyline going through it is that Drew continues to retain. He's a champion all the way through. He's that kind of big baby face at WWE, really, really getting behind, really, really pushing, really investing in. And we go through the TLC pay-per-view and on to Royal Rumble in January 2021. I think Brock Lesnar is winning the Royal Rumble 2021. He had a really good showing this year. He's he may have won one Royal Rumble before. I think was it in the build up to 2003.
It's the one where he at the end it was him, Kane, and Taker. Taker eliminated Kane, and then Brock came in afterwards. Sorry, Brock pushed him over and won the Rumble. Was that the one where he ended up facing Angle?
Yes, WrestleMania 19, 2003. So I think Brock's winning the Royal Rumble, but I think that. Let's see. So Brock's winning the Rumble.
You've got through keeping the belt all the way through.
All the way through, but I think at the Royal Rumble, I've got a bit of a fantasy match that plays out between Drew and Aleister Black in January's Rumble. I think that will be a really fun match, whether they turn Aleister Black heel or keep him face. I think that's a really good dynamic. I would like to see Aleister involved in some sort of featured championship match potentially at WrestleMania, but I think that they've got something in store for Aleister Black, and I don't think they're ready to put him in a championship match next year's WrestleMania, but maybe a Royal Rumble match, or it could be a multi-man match, maybe throw in AJ in there, or maybe Seth in like a three-way. But I think that there could be, I think that Aleister Black and Drew McIntyre's paths will cross at some point, either late this year or early next year. So I'm predicting that they'll have a match at the Royal Rumble, but I think that Drew will retain. You got Brock winning the Royal Rumble all the way through to WrestleMania, where you have the rematch, Brock versus Drew going in as the champion, give him a good 15 minutes, give him the match they should have had this past week in front of 75, 80,000 fans, and give Drew that big win over Brock, retaining the championship. None of this losing it and getting it back nonsense. He keeps the belt all the way through to WrestleMania and retains and beats the Beast in 12 months' time at the SoFi Stadium, WrestleMania 37. And I think that he is the biggest babyface they've got at the moment. And I think if they handle him correctly and treat him right, give him the right opponents and the right storylines, there's no reason why he can't go all the way through to WrestleMania 37 and retain. And to right the wrongs of WrestleMania 36, have the fans there, give him the big fireworks celebration, give him the big Daniel Bryan moments, and have Drew McIntyre as your WWE champion over the Beast yet again 12 months on at WrestleMania 37. How does that sound, my friend?
Do you know what? You've sold me on that.
That sounds good, doesn't it? That sounds good.
it's the as you said, it all depends on how they book it. If they book it correctly, there's nothing wrong with Drew keeping the belt all the way through. Really isn't. Yeah. Not at all.
Yeah.
It's just I just worry about, as we've all seen it before. Me and you especially, we've seen it before where they book it. They think they'll book it for the shock factor, to build a feel good moment, and sometimes it works and sometimes people turn off. As long as they book it correctly and book it how it should be, I'm more than happy keeping Drew the belt all the way through. Give him, as you said, give him the right opponent, give him the right build, switch people between Raw and SmackDown, even as I said, even bring NXT people in, just as fillers, but have your main people, like as you said, your Seth, your Rollins, even your Aleister Black, your Andrade. I thought that's a good shout. Is that go back and bring matches through that people may not have seen on the big shows, but bring it back from what potentially was on NXT. I think that's a good shout. Is that? You've sold me on that. I'll go with that.
Starts with a bit of a 3MB reunion that goes wrong, and having Jinder flanked by Heath Slater and Hornswoggle, of course. Who can forget Hornswoggle at the Money in the Bank pay-per-view? Then going on to AJ Extreme Rules, Seth Rollins at SummerSlam, Andrade at Hell in a Cell, Tyson Fury at the Saudi show in October, through to Sheamus after getting drafted to Raw in November's pay-per-view Survivor Series, and then Seth possibly taking on an Aleister Black, Drew taking on an Aleister Black at the Royal Rumble in January 2021, and then on to having that crowning moment and retaining all the way through at next year's WrestleMania. So some interesting names there, but personally, I'll scrap all of that, and I just want to see the Drew Jinder match, to be honest with you. If you have a Drew Jinder match, then I'll be a happy wrestling fan. That would be pretty awesome, but I don't think many people will be behind me there, but just for the kind of, nostalgia and the 3MB vibe. But there we go.
At Saudi Arabia, you have a 3MB reunion with all four of them. So you've got Jinder, Slater, you've got Drew, and Hornswoggle.
It's got to happen. It's got to happen. Oh, the wrestlers that were on my list that didn't quite play a part. I mean, I've got Cain Velasquez, but I think he could potentially have a match with Brock somewhere down the line. I don't know. We haven't really heard much from Cain Velasquez since his last big money match in Saudi Arabia. Poor fella. But let's have a look. Potentially a heel turn from Kevin Owens. You never know. Maybe, crikey, Bobby Lashley. You mentioned Bobby Lashley. I did even consider putting Edge in there as well. I mean, Edge is on a multi-million-dollar contract. I think it's like $3 or $4 million per year that he he's signed up to. So they might have big plans for him putting in a big match, maybe in a SummerSlam or a Survivor Series in a championship match. But that I don't think the dynamic would quite work there, and it'd be good to see him go up against a big heel if necessary. But quite interesting.
He's one of the, again, like you said, he's one of these people like Taker and that they don't need the belt. It could be potentially someone to help Drew go through, but I don't think for me, Edge. It all depends on how many matches he's going to have a year. Because is he going to be on? Is it going to be 6 a year? If he's going to be 6 a year, then you could build to different stories, and you don't need to touch Drew at all. Or as you said, you could even have it where he goes over to SmackDown and puts over other talent. I can see him being one of these people that puts over people, like how we've talked about with other numerous wrestlers. He's a good person to help build up. I mean, he's talked about his dream match being Roman Reigns. I'd love to see him facing people like Adam Cole. That would be quite a really nice match. But as we go back to Drew, I think the way that you've put it across and the way that you've laid out your road to the next WrestleMania, I'd be happy with that.
I think you say anything with enough passion and people believe you. But there we go. But WWE will probably piss on all of our dreams and just get Baron Corbin to take the title off him in a couple of months' time. So all of it. Who knows?